I was taking, again, this is disclosure of my usage, not for anybody else. Hypothetically, I was taking 4 IU. All right.
On today's episode of Diet Drinks, we got Fitz Premium Root Beer.
Yeah, what was the one you were drinking last time? You didn't show it. It probably just looked like to people you're drinking
I'll
beer.
show you. I have it over here because I didn't like it. I didn't finish it. It was a Blenheim Diet Ginger Ale.
Bro, I'm telling you, you should just like review these. Like,
I know.
I'll sit and review them with you. Like, I'll buy one and you buy one, and then we'll just review diet sodas. Like, because I'm like a diet drink connoisseur. Like, we could go through all of the liquid, Crystal Lights, all of like I just because I've tasted every single one at this point, right? Because it's like I love them, you know.
Well, I know. So I've tried all like the regular diet sodas. That's why like when I went to that store and I saw they had all like the artisan diet drinks, I was like, gotta build a 6-pack.
That's why I'm excited, because they have the fries here, because it's a different grocery store that I've gone to before, so they have all these different flavors, and I'm like, man, this is so cool.
No.
All right, cool. So all right, so the last episode was episode number 8. So this is going to be the Conscious Bodybuilding Podcast, episode number 9. Today we're going to be dissecting my blood work with Jordan again. How you doing, Jordan?
Doing well, can't complain.
Cool. So I want to just give a disclaimer here. I did this in my last blood work video. Essentially, you know, we are not medical doctors. We are just going to review my blood work, and this is going to hopefully serve a purpose of you who are watching being able to ask the right questions with your doctor or with someone that you work with, or be able to monitor your blood work and hopefully keep people safe. Now, that being said, we are all individual people, so it's not going to, something that reflects on my blood work may not be bad on your blood work, so it's important to discuss with professionals. I personally choose to not, because I don't have a whole lot of professionals in my corner currently that I can consult. I have in the past, and that is how I know how to interpret this, or believe I know how to interpret this in a good manner. Jordan has seen a lot of panels as well in his profession, his line of work. He's done a lot of research on his own. So I just want you guys to know that this is not a prescription. This is just to be able to show you what I'm going through, what my process is. Essentially what my social media is just documenting my process. The conversations I have with Jordan are conversations we would normally have if we weren't recording them. But I think it may be of value to people to actually record them. So I just wanted to show you guys that. That being said, if you do choose to use anabolics and you do have a doctor, it is important that you get a doctor that is appropriate, who knows how to interpret your blood work. I've seen physicians before. I was just looking through my
practitioners.
I've
you help us unless they're an endocrinology specialist.
Right.
But I'd rather just go to like an HRT clinic to talk to them about it.
Exactly, and I think that's one thing that's important, is if you ever decide to go down this route, you got to understand how expensive it really is, man. Like, if you choose to not come off, you now have a bill for the rest of your life that includes your testosterone dosage for every month, for the rest of your life. You got potentially an HRT doctor or blood work, which I'm paying privately. So I pay $350. Yeah, I pay $350 every 4 months, and sometimes more. You know, any health supplements, any of that other stuff, these bills add up. So if you're not in a place financially where you think you can afford it, and you're thinking about taking these things, really consider and really plan it into your budget. And so again, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but if you go to see a regular doctor, I was looking over some emails that I had with a previous doctor who got my lab values. And this is when partially when I decided to start doing my blood work on my own. And this doctor was saying, like, here, I can read it actually. Let me pull it up real quick. It's just ridiculous.
I've heard of things like, well, first off, if you're in the United States and you even want to get your hormones, checked and replaced, you might very rarely even get that prescription from a general practitioner. And if you do, I've heard of things like them giving you like a shot per week or something like that. And like when you look at a scale of things, it's just like, that's just so bad. The peaks and valleys, the aromatization, the 5-AR, like, it's not good.
Right. As far as side effect profile and how ineffective that actually is, that's almost as bad as not taking anything, right? Like, it's just like, especially if you're low. Okay. So I've had people that I used to work with that that went to their doctor who exercised regularly, and their doctor was like, "Oh, your liver enzymes are high. I'm going to send you to a liver specialist." And I was
Okay.
like, "Your doctor has no understanding that when you exercise, like just the fact that this person exercised, their
If I had a
liver
hard
enzymes are
workout the
elevated."
day before I got my blood work done, it could be drastically skewed.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. And he did, and I was like, "Your doctor is an idiot." Like that comes from exercise, and now they're going to send him to a liver specialist. Who knows what that liver specialist will do? Maybe they'll put him on medication or something crazy. Like it's just like, just because that one doctor doesn't understand that this marker can be skewed a little bit from exercise, and then they
That's
don't.
what I was gonna ask about your ALT on your
Yeah, we'll get into my blood work. So and we should probably show my first panel too to compare. But this is what my doctor sent me. So the liver test was a bit elevated, so additional lab tests will be needed. And avoid fatty, greasy foods, which is like that's such a nebulous way of describing what defines fatty, greasy foods. Like again, there's no specifics. Alcohol, okay, I already do that. I already do both of those things. HDL and good cholesterol is low. Exercise should help. Don't you think? I'm already fucking exercising 5 times a week. Like, so this is so ridiculous. And obviously, like, my HDL was low because I was on replacement dosages, probably, right? But I'm just like, God, like that's a general practitioner, and that's partially when I was like, okay, I need to do some of my own research. I don't think my insurance covers. I don't know, maybe an endocrinologist. I need to do some further research personally. The blood panels have been doing just great. I think further I would need to do some heart stuff and whatnot. But yeah, so that's what you're going to get with a GP. Most likely, I've had some of my clients go to GPs. I had a client recently, and I'm not going to name him, but you know, he had some values where I was like questioning them, and his doctor was like, "Oh, no further tests are needed." And their baseline of test is so low, like there's no way you can identify anything from it, really.
Yeah.
And there are things that could
realize the scale things are put on isn't necessarily meant to be 100% optimal. You know, like
right.
Like
yeah, if you're a high range, that's a oh, you'll go ahead. Sorry.
It might be in range, but that's not optimal for your
Right.
health.
If you're at the end of that range, that might be dangerous. Like his glucose is a little high, and I was like, your doctor should run insulin tests. He was like, his doctor was like, oh well, you know, this is just a snapshot. It could be different. It could have been lower. And I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, it could have been higher at any point in the day. Like his A1C was a little bit elevated too. So I'm like, okay, we're already getting some direction that this may be an issue. Can you do further testing? And his doctor was like, no. And I don't want to, I'm not going to name his name, and I hope he's okay with me saying this, but you know what his doctor recommended to him? And he laughed at this too. His doctor said, you should go on Weight Watchers. I was like, oh my God, like that's what you get. And, you know, this is my experience, as people around me's experience. It's, you know, I hope that other people out there are getting better treatment, but man, that's pretty poor. If you, all of those stories I just said, like that's the treatment that's occurring, you know?
What are you drinking?
Nitro cold brew from Costco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know if they have them in California. When I came out here, they had them at the Costco. Like, I don't know if they're discontinued out there, but they're super good. It's like you shake it and it's nitro already, and you just pop it open and pour it out. Yeah. I'm wearing my, definitely. Yeah. I'm wearing my, I'm definitely not from Arizona t-shirt today. Cool. All right, let me screen share. Okay, so I'm gonna, yeah, definitely, me too, man. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna should I show my first panel first, do you think?
Is this the comparison panel?
Yeah, so this will be my panel that I did pre-cycle, pre-blast.
So it was like more on like just like a cruise, like
GRC? Yeah, well, yeah, a cruise, not an HRT. It's 250 megs a week, no ancillaries. 625, I think, is what it was. Okay, let's blow this up.
Oh, this is like during the quarantine when it was like 1700 was your nanograms, correct?
Yeah.
I remember this one.
Okay, let's put this here. Make us a little bit bigger so you can see us if I can. Let's see. No, I don't think I can. All right, whatever. We're gonna stay that size. Okay. So things I talked to, I consulted with Dante Trudell about this one, and I don't know if I consulted with anybody else. He said albumin, he had mentioned, was high. So this is going to be for comparison. So that was high. He said that might be hydration. Estroidal was 97 here. T3 is normal, a little high.
Crazy.
1700 tests. What? My T3?
Okay, so your estradiol on this one, and you said you were doing 250 milligrams a week,
Yeah.
and people, that's with a dosage frequency of every day. So
Yeah.
what that's going to do is it's going to mimic your body's natural production of a daily one. So that's pretty much most optimal for lacking aromatization or 5-AR into DHT. And his estrogen was estradiol, not total estrogen, but
Yeah.
estradiol was 97, and that was off 250 milligrams. While we compare it to the blast, which you're at 700 milligrams, and that was at like I think 31 or 37.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get into the reason of why that is later. I just want to show this real quick. Yeah, we'll get into that reasoning. I want to show that panel, and then we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I just want to go over this really fast. So you have SHBG, which is lower, and that's probably also because of my administration frequency, partially. And that's why my free test is probably this high, which, I mean, honestly, like, I made progress here. Like, I think people underestimate how much progress you can make. 250 isn't a replacement dosage.
Okay,
like, that's
everybody. If we were to put 250 into a perspective, in a milligram setting, a peak performance natural male would produce the highest 3 to 7 milligrams a day. So let's just say he's at an anomaly and makes 7 milligrams a day. That's only 49 milligrams a week. So obviously you have to think about the ester that's cleaving off of the. Were you doing SIP or was it a probe?
an enthate. That's
Okay.
all. I usually just use an enthate straight through.
Yeah. So, but still 250 as opposed to 49. So people who think 200 milligrams is a replacement dose, it's putting you in super physiological range.
100 is probably a replacement dose. I think I want to play with this in the future. I think 250 is definitely high. I had an idea that it may be enough to maintain. Excuse me. I may need that to maintain, but I want to play around with lowering that to maybe 225, 200, and see if I can still maintain my size, because I want to, especially on my breaks and like my maintenance phases and stuff, just to see like if I can still maintain a good amount of size with that dosage. Because I see people, like, I've gone through some of the forums, Jordan Peters forum, and like those guys are cruising with 250 plus Primable and like 100, 200 milligrams. And I'm like, you're not getting any resensitization there. You're not getting any, you're not giving your body any sort of break. You're always just crushing it with hormones. You're always over, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the androgen receptor is constantly getting bombarded with androgens, right? So I would definitely like to play around with moving that lower in the future, because I personally, again, think I can build muscle. If I'm really on top of my nutrition, I can build muscle on this dosage, and I think I did.
I think you did too. I remember.
Yeah.
And we were training in a less optimal.
Right. Exactly. I definitely think I improved. So I think people need to understand, like, there's people I see who take 300, and I'm like, dude, what are you even doing? Especially if you're smaller, you can probably get away with taking down to replacement if you're blasting and cruising instead of coming off. Right. You want to take that down to 100, 150. Again, that's not advice. It's just maybe what I would recommend if you were to do that. And then what was I going to say? I guess we can just go through the rest of this.
One thing I wanted to potentially say was, so if we look at your DHEA, it says it's in the normal range. Obviously, it's on the lower end of the normal range, being the high end, being like 690. Is that milligrams per deciliter or nanograms? I can't read. Nanograms.
No, it's micrograms per deciliter.
Oh, it's so small of a print I couldn't see.
Sorry.
So I was thinking, essentially because of the suppression due to exogenous test, you probably could like feel even better supplementing with some pregnenolone and DHEA.
Okay. What would be the benefit of doing that?
Okay, yeah. So the reason why I think you should do that is because, okay, so like I guess in the cascade effect of things, it goes cholesterol to pregnenolone, and then pregnenolone to DHEA, and DHEA is what branches off and is like kind of like the precursor to the estradiol, testosterone, etc.
Okay.
So I know the pregnenolone I'd pretty much be saying to like backfill those pathways, the DHEA and the pregnenolone, because pregnenolone is like the parent hormone to all neurosteroids. It's also neuroprotective
Okay.
and like enhanced cognitive function. And then the DHEA might aid in just the testosterone estrogen, which obviously already is you're getting that.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk about that later, but I think I push my test pretty high, so maybe that would be a benefit. Do you have like a dosage that would like be a good one to start with?
I'd need to do more research in the pregnenolones. I
Yeah,
know
same.
the
Good.
DHEA, I'd recommend like 50 milligrams.
Okay, here, let me write that down.
It's just because those the back pathways are essentially getting like cut off because now the testosterone is being given exogenously.
Hold on. Just need a pen. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I think you thoroughly understand this a little more than I do, like on a mechanistic standpoint. Like I understand a lot of things on like a macro, but I think you're really understanding like the actual mechanisms of action more so than I do.
You got to think of it as like a cascade of things. It goes,
Right.
you know, like, and then testosterone and estrogen evidently are kind of like at the very end of the list.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess from like a natural perspective, if your DHEA was low, then you're gonna have low testosterone.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's maybe not optimal even on a blast.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I'm starting to grasp more so like 5-alpha reductase and like the processes behind all of that and how
Enzymes and stuff.
Yeah. I'm just getting into that. It's really, we'd have to really talk about this because there's nobody. I'm an audiovisual learner. There's nobody online who puts that out in like a audiovisual way to where I can see the pathways and see it. Like,
Derek, more plates, more dates.
Yeah, I guess he does. Link me some of his videos. So I think I maybe missed over some of those kind of videos.
Yeah,
Insulin's really good.
You need to school me on the insulin.
Oh yeah. Okay, so this is interesting. I actually commented on John Meadows' video because John Meadows had a heart attack recently.
Yeah.
And he had an insulin of 10, I believe. Now, when I consulted with Stan Efferding and people in his corner, he had a guy on his podcast, and if I can remember what podcast it was, I'll link it below. But the guy was saying that, and then they all agree. Damon was on this one as well. Damon's been on this podcast before. That an insulin of above 6 is insulin resistance. That's not good. So he was at a 10, and the doctor who was with him was like, "Yeah, that's great. You're totally fine," because he was.
I remember watching that video. The doctor.
Yeah, I commented on it, and I was like, "Hey, listen, John, I'm not a doctor, but I would maybe just consult someone else who might know it a little bit better," because he also had high ferritin or GGT along with thick blood, which can lead to hematomocrosis, I believe is the way you pronounce it, which may have led to his condition. Speculation, 100% speculation, but I was like, hey, maybe look into that. Like, it was just something that got overlooked, I thought. Anyway, that's just from the people I consulted with. So this is really good. A 2.7, a really, really good. You want to be below 6. The range, and this is partially, part of maybe some of the reason why diabetes and stuff is so prevalent is because we're so forgiving on some of these ranges, so we don't catch it as early. And that may not be the part of why it is, but maybe better at treating it earlier if we had these ranges more in line with what the current evidence-based community is saying is too high. So something like a 6 should be the high end of the reference range here, and we're going up to 19. I've heard that they have some up to go like 24 or 30 for fasted insulin. You have too much insulin, that means your pancreas is working too hard to get the glucose out of your blood. This here, there's a ratio. You can go online and search what's it called, insulin sensitivity ratio. You can take your fasted blood glucose from a panel like this, your insulin, and it'll tell you your insulin sensitivity. But you want this to be low. You want this to be, I would say, for a healthy athletic individual, probably below 4, below 6 for just a normal person. And this is, again, people who are running 10, 12, that's dangerous. You're pre-diabetic. So luteinizing hormone obviously low because I'm not producing
LH
And
and
then,
FSH for
yeah,
everybody
yeah,
wondering. That's luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and those are pretty much in the testes and all that. So if your testes are shut off, it's going to be low on any blood panel. That's kind of how you can see if people are exogenously using.
yeah, yeah. Especially if someone's like trying to claim natty.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry, this thing is frustrating. I don't know why it shows like this. T4 normal, TSH normal. Your TSH is high. It means your thyroid is working too hard to basically produce thyroid hormone, or I don't know if that.
Hyperthyroidism.
Yeah, so you want to watch out for that. And then vitamin D hydroxy, which is 60, probably good. I could probably run that a little bit higher. I was getting a lot of sun exposure and taking 8,000 IUs of vitamin D3 here. So you guys got to understand that that's a lot. I mean, for some people that may be different, but
You think
most people are deficient in vitamin D. So
you think taking melanotan would change that?
maybe I was going to try an experiment here because I'm in Arizona. I want to get some more sun exposure. So I was going to get some soon and try it. But yeah, I'll run it. I'll run it. I didn't run it on this last panel because I figured I was in range. I actually upped my dose because I haven't been in the sun as much. I've been at 10,000 IUs. So we'll see. I'll take some melanotan and then run that on my next panel. Okay, so let's get into the current panel. Sorry, guys, that was just review. I'll probably just put a timestamp. So if you just want to jump into the current panel, you can see it. I'm just going to keep it like this, maybe, so you guys can.
Yeah, that's a lot easier to see.
Yeah. Here, let me see if I can blow it up without it.
And then for anybody looking at this, I think this is a good testament to micronutrition. And then that's kind of where my question was coming in. What do you think made this blood work so good, given the circumstances that there was super physiological amounts of androgens?
Yeah. Okay. So everybody listening, I was on a blast. This is a week post blast. So you'll notice some of my hormones are the half life of the drugs had already dropped off. So that there was very little left in my system. I was kind of bummed. I probably should have ran it on the blast, but still, this is a good snapshot of probably what my health looks like after a really heavy dose of stuff. So I was taking, again, this is disclosure of my usage, not for anybody else. Hypothetically, I was taking 4 IUs of growth hormone, 12.5 total, 12 grams, or 1.2 grams, sorry, not 12 grams, 1.2 grams total of drug load. That would be about 700 megs of testosterone, 250 milligrams of DECA, and I think it was 250 primobolan as well. And the first half of the cycle I actually ran EQ. So I ran equal parts test and EQ 600, 600. And we'll get into maybe how that maybe affected this panel as well. I switched midway through because I did some further research. I'm no longer going to be rotating compounds based on that research. We can talk about that once we get down to that as well. As far as micronutrition, so I had actually Damon on a podcast right after I did my last panel, and I said, "Hey, Damon, my iron's a little bit high. What do I do?" The last guy I had consulted with, Dante Trudell, said lower your red meat consumption, and Damon's like, you may have to, but let's try just having dairy with your red meat because calcium offsets iron absorption. And I was taking IP6 as well, which helped lower the iron, which was Dante's recommendation. But I did not lower my red meat. I actually increased my red meat consumption by half pound. So I was eating 2 pounds of red meat a day on this panel, and throughout the last 6 months or so. Because I feel red meat is just a superior protein source. It's full of micronutrition. Other than that, I was having cheese with my mashes. So I was putting actual cheddar cheese in the monster mashes that I was making. So I only had one red meat meal that didn't have calcium in it. I had eggs in the morning, and then one meal post-workout, low fat. I had a really lean top round steak with my rice and my honey. And then the rest had either cheese or yogurt alongside the meal. So that was one thing I think was really beneficial here. Other things I changed, there was some on the supplement front. We can get into it later in the podcast, but just one thing, I mean, that was a recommendation. They said, stop, he said, stop eating as much red meat. And I was like, man, I just kind of trust red meat. Like I haven't seen any, when it's consumed with vegetables and you're metabolically healthy, you'll notice people in the carnivore community saying like, look, LDL isn't dangerous when you are metabolically healthy. We don't have a whole lot of evidence to substantiate that just yet, but we don't have evidence to refute it either. So there's people in the evidence-based community that are like, you can't run your LDL that high. We know that in metabolically unhealthy people, it's dangerous. It's like, but we have no research to say that in metabolically healthy people, it's dangerous or not dangerous. We have none. So, based on those people, they're being cautious, obviously, but with a lot of red meat, your LDL can be high. I've seen people much higher than I am. So we'll go into the panel right now. But
Yeah,
that's
let's
kind of
get
just
into
my
it.
quick rundown of what micronutrition, how that affected this specific panel. So we have cardio CRP. That's a measure of inflammation, total inflammation. Mine's always been chronically low. So I'm probably just going to stop taking, I've been taking curcumin. It's very expensive. And I want to actually limit the amount of things that I'm taking that impede inflammation, just because like
Inflammation is a muscle trigger.
right, exactly. And I'm like, why am I taking this if I have low inflammation chronically? If I see it go up, then I may start bringing it back in, but it's just expensive, and it's unnecessary if I need it. Glucose is 8. Yeah, go ahead.
I think inflammation from training is going to be way different than people who have a major inflammation from digestive distress.
Right. And again, I think that's a testament to micronutrition as well, is where I'm eating foods that agree with me. I'm avoiding things like broccoli, which impedes absorption of some nutrients. Yeah. I'm eating only vegetables that digest well, only carbohydrates that digest well, protein that digests well, because I'm eating such a large volume. And I think that reflects here too. I think you would see me having more problems if I was doing a standard typical bodybuilding diet and not absorbing all of my food, not absorbing all of my micronutrition, having a big distended gut, all that stuff that goes along with pushing a large volume of food. The high insulin, high glucose. So here's 81 was my glucose, which is great. I was 72 before I went in. I tested it beforehand. It's always lower before I go in. Maybe, I don't know, gluconeogenesis or something maybe raises it up. But I was really low before I went in. Creatinine, kidney, good. Urea, good. EGFR, I can't remember what that marker represents. Sorry, guys. ALT, so liver enzymes, AST and ALT. ALT slightly elevated.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask. I thought that was just from like training. Yeah. But I was gonna ask you what you think that would be from.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's from training. I think I have actually really good liver health. I don't take oral enhancements. I just avoid them. They just don't react well with me. That may change in the future, but I've never had a good experience with them. So unless I'm like dieting, so I don't touch those. So my liver health is probably pretty good. This is most likely from training, and 2 points over is totally fine. I've seen people say that you can probably go up as much as like 3 times, and maybe higher, but this isn't anything to be concerned. If you're double and you just exercise regularly, probably fine. I would definitely consult with the doctor if you're more than double this range. Definitely someone who knows what they're talking about, not a general practitioner. But this shouldn't be anything to be concerned of at all, especially if you resistance train.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get into the fun stuff here. Estroidal. And this is all these measurements. I like how I use Quest now, because the other one, LabCorp, they doubled their prices, but Quest uses ultra sensitivity testing. So this is an actual reflection of how much estrogen's actually in my system. It's not cross detecting other types of estrogens. You know how there's estrone and there's different. What happens is if you don't get a specific ultra sensitive test, then what'll happen is it'll cross detect other estrogens. Yeah, it'll cross detect other estrogens. This number could be artificially inflated. So this one, 36, a little bit outside the reference range. This is actually kind of low for what I would say.
Yeah, so I thought that was I thought it was pretty low as well. In comparison. Okay, so if we think back to the previous panel we looked at, that was 250 milligrams. I'm just trying to think of how much essentially like cleaved off from the end of the cycle, because if it was supposed 700, then your free test should be way higher, because the free test on the 250 was like, I think 500, not, you know.
Yeah, I mean, either my stuff was fake, either my stuff was fake, which I doubt it was, because I was putting on size, I would say at a good rate. So I think this is just simply that the half-life, everything just dropped off, and I went back down to baseline fairly quickly. And that probably is also because I do everyday administration, so that may have helped.
You can manipulate everything.
Yeah, a little bit more. The metabolites may stay in my system longer, but the actual drug load is out pretty quickly. Clears pretty quickly.
And then the testosterone metabolites, I think those are going to clear out a lot quicker than a 19 nor.
Yeah. And that won't detect on right. And what you're saying, that won't detect on an ultra sensitive panel. So LCMS, that won't detect tests, quote unquote, from a 19 nor basically. So that won't artificially inflate that number. So some people get non-sensitive testing, and their test will be through the roof, and some people take 19 nors, but if they get ultra sensitive, if they're only taking 19 nors, their test will be undetectable. And you can watch Derek's video on his HRT with 19 nors, and he has no tests on like almost none on an ultra sensitive test, using the same drug load, 100 milligrams of 19 nor versus testosterone. So the reason why this level is probably pretty low, first part of the cycle is equipoise. So it's proposed that equipoise, and this is a speculation, we don't have enough research, but people say, oh, equipoise acts like an AI. It may not be exactly acting like an AI. It may be competing with the aromatase enzyme. And what happens is it converts into estrone instead. So it takes some of that normal testosterone that would have aromatized, and it converts into estrone instead of estroidal. So that's why. What's up?
I believe primobolan is like an antagonist of estrogen, essentially.
Yeah. So
it's T derivative.
Right. So exactly. So that it may be working in a similar mechanism here.
Yeah.
So that's why that number is pretty low, and I think that's why I can kind of run my test higher, is using these types of compounds. I don't like equipoise. I don't think it's not ideal, because when you take it, I would like something that either just doesn't impact the aromatization as much.
Yeah.
Primobolan seems to be a well-tolerated compound.
Yeah,
that's why I'm choosing it.
And the reason being, equipoise is going to impact that pathway is because if we look at the family tree, there's essentially three. There's the DHT derivatives, which are obviously from the more androgenic 5-AR of testosterone. Then there's the testosterone ones, which is your equipoise is in that family. It is. And then there's the 19 nors. So equipoise being under the testosterone family is going to have those kind of like similar values.
Yeah. And I think you want, when you run your test to a level you can tolerate well, after that, you want to pick something that's more tissue selective. And that may be something like a 19 nor or a primobolan, which are well tolerated. 19 nors can be somewhat less well tolerated. Deca, the Deca. Sorry, I don't like referring it to as Deca. It's more of a, what is it?
It's just 19.
Nandrolone, yeah.
Deca is the ester.
This ester, yeah. I hate referring it to it that way, because it's just so commonly known that way. So,
that's fun.
That one,
I could have testosterone decanoate, and
exactly. But that one is it's shown in monotherapy context to be somewhat dangerous and cardiotoxic, liver toxic, neurotoxic. But when it's combined with something that aromatizes correctly, such as testosterone, aromatizes at a, it's a bioidentical hormone, so it's going to aromatize correctly at a normal rate. It tends to be not as toxic. So I use that as something that tolerates well. It's very tissue selective, really good muscle builder. Primobolan, something that's very well tolerated. So I just try to pick those. People, and you were talking about this before, but like maybe give the listeners like kind of an idea, like, with these types of compounds, they're safer, but there's this thing, and I think you see this a lot in where you work, is people try to take these newer age, designer steroids that don't have a lot of research behind them, and they think that
past like a rodent model or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But they're first of all, they're sexy. People think, oh, they're going to cause crazy gains, and then some people associate like side effects with making gains, like water retention. They think they're making tons of gains. Like, I don't know if you've experienced that before, but
no, I have, especially because people use the in-body machine, and it calculates like lean body mass, and that could just be pure glycogen or water.
Yeah. And then if you see yourself blow up 5-10 pounds from taking, my Siri turned on, hold on. If you see yourself blow up 5 or 10 pounds from taking a D-bolt, oh my fucking God. Okay, sorry. I don't know why my Siri keeps turning on.
I've dealt with it, bro. I've had to tell so many people to just like pretty much be like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah. Yeah,
Stop.
exactly. I mean, but the thing is, you see, you say, so again, you gain 5-10 pounds immediately from taking a D-bol, and it's all water, no muscle, maybe a little bit. Excuse me. Then you're gonna someone who doesn't understand what's going on will maybe associate that with, oh, I'm getting more jacked, I'm building more muscle.
Mhm.
Maybe someone like yourself or myself. And again, we never said this in the last podcast. Jordan doesn't take anything. He's natural. Let's be clear here. He just knows a lot about this stuff. I think we should have said that like at the beginning of the last one, because we went on this whole rant. People were like, "Oh my god, this guy's like loaded. What the hell?" But we know that when you take the correct compounds, you get less side effects, which those side effects, water retention isn't a good thing. Okay. It's not you building muscle. It's you,
Not good for blood pressure either.
right. And it's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
We understand how slow muscle building the process is. It's not like people think they take a bunch of stuff and they're just going to gain 20 pounds of muscle. Like it's even if you take stuff, maybe your first time you could gain a good amount, but it's pretty slow thereafter. And then people, who aren't in this for the long run want to get this thing that makes them blow up like, 20 pounds in a
Doesn't
couple weeks.
exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. It really doesn't. I'm sorry if you've never taken anything before and you think that taking stuff is going to fix all your problems, you're still going to have to be at it for 5-10 years if you really want to get there. And then you got to really, uh, gauge whether that's worth it to you. Some people it's not.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we understand that if you take more safe, efficacious compounds that you gain, at a normal rate, that you are actually putting on muscle, you can actually tell what's going on because you don't have a lot of excess water retention. So you can actually tell what direction you're going in. Are you putting on more muscle or more fat? So I think it's important that people stay away from those compounds that don't have a lot of research behind them and use the things that are more tolerated. Like, I mean, all the
100%.
stuff, all the stuff I'm taking is the stuff that was around when Arnold's day. We have tons of
Yeah.
research behind it too, right? And it
And
works just the same.
and when you say tissue selective, for anybody who's wondering what that is, so first off, testosterone isn't even considered an AAS, androgenic anabolic steroid. It's just known as like a sex hormone essentially, because it's pretty much like the originator. It's like the big dad of like all these further to come things. And
Yeah.
anything curated after that by any AIS built after that is made to be more tissue selective than testosterone was.
Right.
And when we say that, we're talking about like like prostate binding and stuff like that. Like it not trying to do that. You want muscle and bone tissue selectivity.
Right. They break it down into even more simple terms. Anabolic, like just these drugs in general, they have a certain amount of androgenicity, which is male sex characteristics, and anabolic. Yeah, anabolic. So this is anabolic is growth of tissue, right? You want to maximize anabolic effects and minimize androgenic effects, because androgenic effects, you think hair growth and masculine effects. Okay, cool, you're gonna be more manly. Well, not everybody wants that, and those things can actually be negative because they can lead to things like balding, acne, and other problems that you want to minimize, especially for females who use enhancements as well.
You don't want a deepened voice and a larger clit.
Right, exactly. So, so exactly, and when you're in this for the long haul, you don't want to be using things that cause a lot of androgen side effects, because those could be deleterious to your health long term. I used to think, like when I was a kid, like, I want a beard and a deep voice and all that stuff. I mean, I got that, but then I started realizing I started getting other side effects alongside of that by using things that weren't as safe and weren't as tissue selective.
I still haven't gotten that clearly.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys, look, there's the proof's in the pudding. Jordan is on 2 to 3 grams of stuff right now as we speak. Anyway, so yeah, that's layman's terms. You guys, you want to pick things that are safe and reflect like that on your blood work. Okay, so again, this is probably a little bit lower. That last one was 1700. This could also just be sources. You guys got to understand that we're not getting these from pharmaceutical companies. So you could get it something that's dosed improperly because someone made it in their kitchen. Unfortunately, that's just the fact of the matter. It would be really cool if these things were regulated and legalized. Unfortunately, they are not. I think they can be safe and used, and they're used in medicine, and I think they can be used safely if people were educated correctly on them. But that's another story for another time. But essentially, that could be why this is maybe a little bit lower at the same dosage. It could just be that I accidentally took less on a given day because I do everyday administration. And then it's just this is a snapshot in time, so this could just be a fluctuation. It could have been higher later that day or lower later that day. So
So
yeah,
what did you drop down to? Because you said this was a week after. What you just dropped down to, like 200, 250 or
250.
something?
Yeah, so I dropped from 1.2 total drug load to 250.
Yeah. So the reason why I think this dropped down quick enough is because of that daily administration.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and which is good though, because if you're having bad side effects and you want to clear that stuff out, then
Oh yeah.
it's probably a little bit better to do that.
Yeah. That's why like faster esters. You know, like I definitely recommend.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing that in the future, because then
Honestly,
if I
like
was
for
like,
you, if
yeah,
since you're pinning every day, I'd recommend you go to a pro because I think that's gonna even mitigate the side effects even more. I know that's what Derek
yeah,
does,
yeah,
but the only downside to that is it's like, okay, well, I
it's
know
more
you don't miss a
expensive.
pin, but like if you do have to miss a pin, you really can't.
I don't. You got to understand. Like, I mean, I'm my compliance to everything, my nutrition, my pinning, everything, my training is near
Yeah,
100%. Like,
I believe. I know. I
I,
know.
yeah, it's just not like it's not. I've been in it. I've invested so much money that I came to a point where I was like, I can't fuck up on any of this. Like, I've spent so much money in bodybuilding that if I feel like almost like bad if I don't do something in it, and that creates the kind of an anxiety, unfortunately. But at the same time, I think it'll ultimately propel me to where I want to go. But anyway, beside the point. Yeah, so no, I was thinking about doing that because the way that we periodize my training and my nutrition now is there's breaks in between, right? And I think that's the smartest way to do it. So it might be smarter to use like an NPP. I don't know if primo doesn't come in faster esters, but
I've never
at
seen.
least an NPP and a probe, and then once I clear that out, I'll be able to resensitize really quickly if I do like a 4-week maintenance, and be able to resensitize so I can go back on and make gains in a safe and effective manner. And then one thing I wanted to say as well as we get through this panel is, you guys, it's important to do blood work when you blast, not when you cruise. I mean, have the cruise to reference like I just did, but it's important to do it when you blast, because you got to understand, if you're a bodybuilder, you're on a blast more often than you're on a cruise, right? So if your blood work is skewed when you're on a blast and you're on most of the year, that's a real reflection of your health. And if it's bad, then you are doing damage, no doubt.
Most definitely.
Okay, so yeah, DHEA again, probably a little bit lower. What would you say? Probably get that towards the mid range.
Yeah. I just feel like if you backfill those pathways that come even before like the baseline of just like testosterone and estrogen, like what would if there's no benefits from it, what would be the negatives? There wouldn't be any negatives. It'd be
Right.
better than not, in my opinion. And then there was one other thing I forgot to I couldn't see it, or I don't know if we've gone past it yet, but was
Or
prolactin.
yeah, here we'll go to that. Ferritin. This could be a little bit high. Again, the reference ranges are pretty forgiving in the United States. Stan sent me a video way back when it was this guy who had liver cancer, and he basically said
Wow.
that these reference ranges are way too high. He ended up having deleterious effects from this. So I don't know necessarily how to get this lower. I probably should do more research. GGT wanted a 16, which is mine is a 17. Again, very forgiving here. Would do more research on that if you guys are curious. So I probably I'll link that video too. I just need to remember to do it. Hemoglobin, that's good. That's and again, for people who don't know, hemoglobin is a base. I can't remember exactly. It basically part of the glucose molecule will bind to part of hemoglobin in your blood, and it basically this is a longer, a bigger snapshot of what your glucose looks like over a long period of time. So if this is high chronically, that means you are probably insulin resistant. You probably have you're leading towards type 2 diabetes. Yeah, let's see. Less than 5% consistent with the absence of diabetes, greater increased risk of diabetes, greater than 6.5 consistent with diabetes. So prostate, good. That's really low.
Yeah. Wow.
Urinalysis, insulin, even lower on a blast, which is I'm just so happy about that. Guys, I did attenuate some of this with taking a long-acting Lantus. When I administer GH, that will cause insulin resistance the second you take a shot. So as a backup, I chose to take Lantus, very low dosage, 10 IUs a day, just to make sure that insulin's getting my blood glucose is not staying elevated for long periods of time. And what I would say is people in the bodybuilding industry are using metformin a lot, and I'm against the use of metformin on the whole because of it has some interaction with AMPK, which is a catabolic signaler. It's not a good muscle builder. It's not impedes carbohydrate absorption from what we understand currently, which as a bodybuilder, you don't want your carbohydrate absorption to be impeded. You want to be digesting your carbohydrates so you can use them for training. Although insulin is an anabolic hormone, or at least anti-catabolic, and will drive nutrients into muscles and is much better and more effective. So I would say Lantus is much more, in my opinion, preferred than a metformin. I've seen coaches such as Matt Jansen saying insulin has no use, and I think in a safe manner at a very low dose just to attenuate the side effects. Insulin isn't necessarily anabolic. I've read studies about it not really affecting muscle protein synthesis a whole lot. Sorry, my dog.
Luca.
Hey, buddy. How you doing? Okay. Not on camera. No. I've read studies saying that
Luca.
He can't hear you.
No.
What's going on, buddy? Yeah, he's just staring at me. I've read studies saying that insulin doesn't really increase muscle protein synthesis, but that's in a monotherapy context. That's not with growth hormone or testosterone. So maybe it does have some effect, but
yeah, synergistic.
Yeah, but I don't know if we have a lot of research on that. I would love to get John Jewett on and talk about that because I think he knows a lot about that. Do you have anything to say? Sorry, I'm just talking like crazy.
A lot of the stuff about like insulin, I don't know enough. That's stuff that I wanted to know about. And then the hemoglobin, hematocrit, that's stuff I wanted you to kind of go over.
Yeah. No, I like it because I think like where my knowledge has a gap, I think you know, and then like vice versa. I'm more thorough on the nutrition front and how that may affect it a little bit, but I think you understand like the pharmacology side a little bit more. So I like the balance we got going on here. Yeah, okay, so okay, you guys got to understand, if you live in Colorado, these things are going to be elevated just because of the elevation. So you got to understand this is not actually dangerous isolated by itself. This is fine. This is what we want, right? This is why cyclists take EPO and take testosterone, is because it increases their red blood cell count, which increases their oxygen carrying capacity throughout their body, which increases your endurance, right? You want this, right? This is okay on its own. Now, if my platelets were high, that would reflect that my blood is viscous and thick. That is bad. That can cause clotting. That can cause a heart attack. My platelets are not high, though.
When do you know, especially letting the people know, when should you donate blood or
you should donate. Yeah, you should donate blood if your platelets are high. Which people, the thing is, people in the bodybuilding industry, this is another thing that goes around that's not, is totally incorrect. People donate without their platelets being high. Like if say I donated right now and I would lose all the benefits, I would become fatigued, I would become tired, my performance would degrade. You would basically you would attenuate the benefits of taking the anabolics in the first place, part of them, by donating blood. So if your platelets are high, and then I believe, what's the other marker that we're looking for that's high? Iron, obviously, would be maybe another one to consider, maybe. Platelets, let me think what the other one was. GGT and ferritin, I think, are the other ones. If those were high as well, you would donate. That would be hematochromatosis. This one would be referred to as, what's the condition? Polycythemia, I think, is the condition that you would be considered to have if you had these high and this high. I'm sorry, don't quote me on that. That's from what I remember.
Yeah.
So you want to watch out for platelets. You want to watch out for GGT and ferritin. If those are higher than 16 for GGT, ferritin, higher than, I would say definitely within the reference range, probably not ideal to be outside of even probably mid-range. I think I'm pushing a little bit there. So keep an eye out for that. I think there was another thing. I can't remember right now.
Then the prolactin right there. So I mean, I don't know a whole lot. I just know that's reference range points, pretty good. Yeah. I just know, 19 Nors, I think they antagonize progesterone.
Yep.
Which is, when it comes to, I know the cascade effect of things, this is like a question I kind of wanted to, not even a question, it was just more something I thought it'd be funny to not even funny, just something to dive into, because it goes pregnenolone to progesterone, and then progesterone either goes to aldosterone or just straight to cortisol. So cortisol only pretty much comes from progesterone. So do you think like 19 Norths in a cycle could lead to like higher cortisol?
Yeah. What do we know about cortisol, though? I don't know
enough.
Let me see if I can find this. I actually literally just took notes on this the other day. There's something. from Lane Norton's book that I was reading about. Right here, I have it right here. Metabolism. Let's see, sorry, it might take 1 second to find this. I think it's really important though.
And I know that's a little off topic. That was just something I was kind of like popping off in my brain.
You're saying prolactin can lead to increased cortisol is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Here. Okay, let's see. I have it right here. So cortisol is in charge of regulating blood sugar through gluconeogenesis. Can result in weight gain, increased appetite. That would be cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously people think of it as a stress hormone too. So it may cause weight gain through appetite. Increased appetite is essentially what that would be the effect of it. When my prolactin's high, I can't remember. I've had it high before. That was when I was taking probably 600 of an androlone, 600 milligrams. That's why I chose to not take it up higher than 250, 300. It's probably my safe range. So I'm probably going to keep it there. I've had it higher before, and I think that's what actually caused my gyno to flare up and end up getting surgery. So that's something you want to look out for. I actually had the last coach I worked with thought my estrogen sides were coming from estrogen, so he had me take 80 mgs of Novadex a day, which is like fucking ridiculous.
That's a term for everybody wondering.
Yeah, that's going to be it's not blocking aromatization, it's blocking estrogen from binding directly, correct?
Yeah.
So so he was having me take
a breast cancer drug.
Yeah. So he thought that was the problem, but it was actually my prolactin that was high. So I had no estrogen, which caused my HDL to be super low, and I had high prolactin when I went to do my blood panel.
Yeah.
So and had no idea what he was doing essentially.
Also, for everybody, a little kind of like a gross note. So prolactin, if you're getting those major side effects, like that's what makes like people milk.
Mm-hmm. Makes men lactate.
Yeah.
And it can cause gynecomastia as well.
Yeah.
It's not estrogen isn't the only thing that can cause it.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to do blood work.
Yeah. And then one other thing I wanted to say about the estrogen was I know aromatase enzyme doesn't function in a dose dependent manner depending on how much testosterone you're given. So like, for example, let's say like you're doing like that 250 milligrams and there is an amount of aromatase going on. It doesn't just inherently go up when you administer more testosterone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's not in a dose-dependent manner of how much aromatization is going on. Let's say that this percent of his aromatization down here with this dose. Let's say you add more testosterone. There isn't just going to be that percentage isn't just going to go up.
What do you think happens to the excess then?
I'm not 100%.
Go through a different backdoor, like a different pathway, basically.
Yeah.
Not aromatization.
And then maybe more 5-AR could.
So that's why. Well, that would make sense why people push their dosages up. They don't get more muscular. They just get more side effects. Their hair starts falling out. Right. That's again why it's probably not smart to just go take 2 grams of shit. So yeah, that's interesting point. Okay, and then we have lipids. So I'm gonna say right now, I don't understand lipids, and I really don't think anybody really understands lipids, even professionals. Like there's so much conflicting information on lipids. I've been trying to figure it out. I'm not super concerned with these numbers. They're not crazy out of range. Like I said before this, I've been researching LDL, and there's nobody can agree on what's good and what's bad. LDL is bad in metabolically unhealthy people. We have yet to show in a large, as far as what I've seen, we've yet to show in metabolically healthy people that it's dangerous. You have some of the carnivore community that are running this upwards of 1,000. I think I've heard.
Oh my God.
I don't know if that's necessarily healthy. The Paul Saladino, I think, is one of them. I don't know if that's necessarily healthy. I think a little bit elevated is fine with the red meat I'm eating. I think it's fine. I really do.
Yeah, I'd say all things considering. So even on just like true therapeutic dosages, when I say therapeutic dosages, let's just say the 100 milligrams, people's cholesterol is always going to be skewed, So
yeah.
But there's never going to be a perfect world for that when
right.
you're using exogenous hormones.
Right. So yeah, and that's why we look at other values like C-reactive protein. That's why I'm going to do a calcium score on my heart. You got to use other data, right? This is not enough to say that you're going to have heart disease right here, this alone, right? And I think for anybody really, just looking at your lipids is not enough to say that you have heart disease.
Did you say echocardiogram?
Yeah, well, I didn't say echocardiogram, but I've had EKGs recently. I want to get a calcium score and actually measure plaque and things like that, because I think that's a better marker of that, right?
Yeah.
You take that, you take your blood pressure, you take your lipid panel, you combine all of that, and then maybe you can get a good risk of cardiovascular disease.
Yeah,
But
and then for I guess like if we wanted to supplement anything, I think it'd be really really cool if you'd be willing to try GW5015 Carterin.
yeah, so what is that?
Dude, okay, so I don't know exactly how it works. I never did enough research into it, but I have seen that it drastically fixes people's cholesterol.
Right. Are there any downstream effects of that? Is my question.
Not that I've seen. I
Okay.
just know it didn't make it past rodent models, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. So I would want to do a lot of research before I took that because I'm not necessarily concerned with this per se to where I'm like, I need to actually do
Yeah.
something right now. I take citrus bergamot. It's interesting because Dante Trudell, I'm not discrediting him at all. Like he has his things, his reasons for doing things, but it's funny because he kind of criticized me for my last video because he said, "Hey, look, I know you're hesitant to take some of these supplements, but like you're willing to put drugs in your body. Why aren't you willing to take all these supplements?" And my response was, "Hey, look, we saw that eating too much red meat in the context that I was previously caused my iron to be high, which can be potentially dangerous. That necessarily isn't affected by drugs. That's actually something I did with my diet that could have been dangerous, right?
Mhm.
So who's to say that taking a lot of supplements can't be dangerous to my health? And I
Yeah.
mentioned specifically, like, what if something like citrus bergamot? This is hypothetical. What if something like citrus bergamot impeded my ability to absorb carbohydrates, and then as a result, I'm not being, it's causing a performance degradation,
Yeah.
and not necessarily helping my health at that dosage. And sure enough, I actually saw something. And I'm gonna pull this up right here. I saw something the other day that John Jewett posted, and it was actually citrus bergamot impeding carbohydrate absorption, or here, let's see,
Interesting.
acting as an anti-inflammatory. Which again, you take too many anti-inflammatories, you may fix your blood work, but now you have no inflammation to build muscle or cause adaptations from training stress.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to be cautious about what you're taking, right? You can't just go slam the kitchen sink with dietary supplements. Like I see here, let me read this. Here, I'll just airdrop it to myself, and then I'll show you guys what John Jewett posted up.
And then I heard something about krill oil being better than fish oil for
I was taking
helping.
krill oil for a little bit. I was taking actually cod liver oil. Prefer that's
Okay.
what Stan recommended. I could probably go back to it, but yeah, I might. I don't know. I eat wild fish. I try to just not take a lot of fish oil because it's like, again, it's that inflammation benefit versus like.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just replace that with krill. Cod liver, I think, is similar. I've been using that. So I'll probably just continue to use that maybe instead, because it's like I don't want to take 4 grams of fish oil if I eat wild fish twice a week. I'm already meeting my omega-3 requirement. I don't need to keep compounding that with tons of other shit, right? Okay, so look, AMPK is as a catabolic signaler. Here he says, use what you need to manage blood glucose before you jump to the kitchen sink. Literally, excuse me, what I was just saying. Sorry, I ate before this, so I'm like burping a lot. My bad. Um, Many products are working through AMPK signaling, so a stack might impede exercise adaptations and muscle gains. This is literally what I was just saying. However, some
Yeah.
offer other benefits. All work via AMPK, a catabolic signaler, metformin, berberine, ALA, curcumin, citrus bergamot. You don't need a glucose disposal agent all year round. If you don't have blood glucose control, don't use it. Also may work via blocking carbohydrate absorption. Oh, what was I just saying? This is not what you want on a refeed day and contest prep. So don't take metformin because it's going to impede your carbohydrate absorption. He does recommend it in some contexts, but I personally don't. And prep, you're already going to be insulin sensitive. Also, several of these have to build up in your system. You don't need to take it on a cheat day, and you're insulin sensitive all of a sudden. So essentially, what I was saying, right?
I've done a.
So what's up?
No, continue.
So if you're taking all of these supplements, you got to be cautious because you could also be impeding, exercise adaptations. Again, why I stopped taking curcumin. Like my inflammation isn't high, there's no real need for it. People are like, oh, I'm going to take it to be preventative, and it's like, okay, but you may also be impeding some other downstream things that you may want, right?
Mhm.
So it's a again, I think you go back to Stan and even what Damon says, and it's like you want to be healthy, don't compete. There's a certain amount of trade off that may need to occur. And again, looking at this overall panel, I'm pretty happy with it. HDL. So again, I take So there's bergamot there to help that a little bit. That has definitely improved. 31 isn't bad. It's not bad. I definitely would like to see if I can improve that. If cardarine seems to be promising in the future, then maybe I'll add that in. Dante
There's
actually recommend. Yeah, what's up?
there's a video Derek did on him trying to fix his cholesterol, and I think
I
this
saw
really
that. Yeah.
carries over to you really well because he uses the same type of diet as you.
I don't
But
think he does anymore.
oh
I think he
really?
used to. Yeah, I think he used to. But
Well, his ironically his HDL was 31 as well.
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I know. Most people who are actively trying to do something who are also on anabolics, I notice, are usually around that range. So, um, Dante said my triglycerides were low, so I should increase my saturated fat consumption, which is odd. He said take more coconut oil because I usually choose really lean cuts of red meat, so I don't get a lot of saturated fat from there. I think people need to understand that lean red meat is actually more monounsaturated fat than it is saturated fat.
Yeah.
So that's just a little disclaimer. HDL ratio, you want to be cautious. This is only slightly elevated on a blast, and it's normal when I'm on a cruise. So, not bad at all.
T4 is fine. Yeah, wow.
Me too. Yeah, T4, TSH, good. It's all on a blast. And then one thing I want to add is my blood pressure. Probably trying to hang out on my information there. So with blood pressure, I guess we can get out of this now. So with my blood pressure, it's been a little bit high on my blast, and I think it's almost directly correlated with my body weight. So I had a 140 over 65 and 70. My resting heart rate's really good, like 55 or something like that. It's my systolic number that I've had trouble getting down. I just did this mini cut, lost 18 pounds, and it went back down to like 130 over 60 or 65. So that's one thing that I'm like a little cautious about. I actually talked to Stan. He said like 140 for someone like my size isn't necessarily bad as long as my heart is actually relaxing. For people who don't understand like blood pressure, so your systolic is when your heart puts out pressure. Diastolic is when your heart relaxes. It may be okay if your heart is putting out a lot of pressure, but it's not okay if it's not relaxing, right?
Yeah.
That over time, okay, like let's think about it as like a garden hose, right? If you're pumping high pressure water through a garden hose nonstop, never letting it get any breaks, eventually that garden hose is going to, like a rubber hose, is going to get little nooks in it. And then it may eventually burst, and bursting would be a heart attack essentially, right? And the way I believe it's cholesterol works is it's a little molecule, right? And what happens is this is how arteries calcify, right? So you have the cholesterol floating through the artery, and you have that little burst in the garden hose, or a little nook that has been created from the high pressure. That cholesterol will get caught in there, right? And then other molecules will get caught on that one because it'll catch it, and then eventually that's what would cause a clot. But again, if you're putting out high pressure, but then your heart is able to relax, it's definitely better than you're pushing hard pressure through the hose all the time, or your artery or vein all the time.
Yeah.
But I've been able to get that down. I've been taking things such as tadalafil, beetroot powder, things like that, and I'm able to keep it down.
Tadalafil is a PDE5 inhibitor for everybody.
Yes, it's a Cialis. Cialis is what it's more commonly referred to. But it doesn't necessarily directly just work on your penis. Look up. Hey.
Yeah.
Look up.
So for anybody who takes like a Viagra or a Cialis and they think, "Oh, I'm gonna get a boner," that's not how it works. It increases blood flow to your whole entire body.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, like, it's full disclosure, I would definitely say like I have one more often for sure when I take it, but yeah, it definitely, yeah, it works in different ways. I want to try to avoid taking a blood pressure medication because those generally just serve to dehydrate you. As far as my understanding of them, they're generally just diuretics, which as a bodybuilder, like, let's weigh out the risk, right? Risk to reward. If I'm taking a diuretic, I'm going to be constantly dehydrated. My performance is going to majorly suffer, and that can actually have deleterious effects downstream later on as well.
Diuretics are some of the most dangerous things, I'd say.
Yeah. So, and they're so commonly used amongst bodybuilders. I've seen
Divac,
a lot
Lasix.
of these, well, and not even in the contest prep scenario. Now you see a lot of these evidence-based coaches recommending them like candy to anybody, not even if they have blood pressure, as a preventative measure. And we don't have a lot of data behind the fact that they're safe and effective. I mean, they're effective at taking your blood pressure down a couple points, but the safety behind them, we don't really have a lot of things to point that they're super safe or are really not causing other issues by taking them. So it's like, again, what's your risk to reward of taking something like that? If you're chronically high and you've done everything you can to attenuate it naturally through your nutrition, then maybe you should look at
Yeah.
and other things that I do. I eat a great amount of potassium throughout the day. I eat at least a potato, an orange juice, and beef. And then,
So then
I
people
make
would
sure.
come back to you. Those same people would be like, "Oh, well, just use a potassium-sparing diuretic."
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. It's just ridiculous because people take drugs before they'll even fix their diet,
Yeah.
and then that's unfortunately happening in the evidence-based pharmacology sector of bodybuilding as well. So
I told you about what happened yesterday, right?
what?
The lady who called.
Oh yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. It's people just out there
Guys,
prescribing drugs.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you have a coach and the first thing he's prescribing you is drugs, especially considering this lady, if I was to give you an example of who she is, not a competitor, and she's like probably close to 50.
Yeah, what does this guy think he's doing? Just going around like, yeah, guys. And the context of this is people who have chosen to take this path. This isn't by any means a recommendation. Hopefully, it actually discourages some of you from using stuff because of how look at how complicated this is. Look, you know how many hours of research I had to do to figure this stuff out, and I still don't fully grasp it.
The surface.
Right, exactly. And this is my health I'm playing with, right? I've assessed these risks. I'm willing to take these risks because I'm passionate about what I do. But you got to really seriously consider the implications before you actually think about doing this and look at how much research I've had to do. Look at how much money I've had to put into it. So I don't want people to just see this and be like, wow, cool. I want you to think like, wow, this is actually a really complex process. I want you to be able to respect the process and be able to understand if you're going to take that jump, you need to know all these things first. Luca, hey. Sorry, he's barking at people outside the window. You can see him in the.
He's like a cat.
Yeah, they're both just sit there in the window and bark at people all day. All right. But yeah, so I just want people to understand that, that's just the disclaimer of this is if people are already using, I want you to be able to do it in a safe manner. I want you to be able to look at all those things, listen to what Jordan and I had to say, and maybe be able to make some inferences, maybe talk to some other professionals.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add? I know, I'm sorry I talked a lot. I just like
No,
see something.
good.
I'm like, yeah, get kind of excited about it, right?
We covered a lot, and I think it's really, really, I think it was good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would like Luca. Sorry, he keeps growling in the back. Come on, Luca. I think my camera died here. Good timing.
All right, well, catch you next time, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I would like to get some other people on, and maybe we could talk to some professionals. If you have any idea who we could hit up,
I'll hit up some people too, and
send up some emails. Yeah, that'd be really cool. I'd like to get you and Matthew on too, because I feel like you guys would get along too. The guy who co-hosted the other ones. Yeah, that'd be really cool. All right, man. Have a good day. Hit me up. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for being on. See ya.